We're starting a 5-week series called Braving the Wilderness. It's based on a book by Brene Brown. The tagline is the quest for true belonging and the courage to stand alone. The quest for true belonging and the courage to stand alone. I want to just read a quick piece from Maya Angelou that was the catalyst for the writing of this book. Brene Brown ran across this piece of poetry from Maya Angelou. Maya Angelou is one of Brene Brown's heroes. So here she comes across this piece of poetry. You are only free when you realize that you belong no place. And you belong every place, no place at all. The price is high, the reward is great. Well, what Brene Brown says is it frustrated her, which is a nice word for saying it made her mad. But what I want to tell you about that is that she spent 4 years then researching and writing this book. That's a fantastic way to take our frustration in life that's going to show up because we're human beings and turn it into creative expression and move it through. And I find it to be a wonderful book. Finding that way to stand in our authentic self and to know that we're truly not alone, even though it might feel as if we're alone. Have you ever had the feeling of not belonging? Maybe I should say, is anybody not? Oh my gosh, I remember growing up, Brene Brown talks about her life in her early years in the first chapter about all the ways that she felt like she didn't belong and she didn't fit in. And I found again, as I came into adulthood and got out of graduate school and started being in the working world, that sometimes I had it again. So I really felt like I didn't grow up growing up in Arkansas. I always felt like I was a few steps different, thinking differently from other people. And then I moved to New York and I felt like I was a few steps behind everybody thinking. But what I've learned in life is to be in myself, in my thinking. And to find ways to express my authenticity. And that's my invitation to each of you. Find ways to express your authenticity. So oftentimes we confuse belongingness with approval. I won't belong if people don't approve of me. So I go along to get along. Or I have that drink I really did not want because I felt the pressure from other people to have it. Or I dressed a certain way because that was what was expected of me. Brene Brown tells about going to a leadership conference where she's presenting and the people who are putting on the presentation ask her to wear business attire. So she's in her suit and she's in, her, heels and she's all dressed up and she's feeling out of sorts because she doesn't feel like herself. And one of the other presenters said, oh yeah, I feel that way all the time. But that's just what you have to do. And Brene Brown, sitting in the green room before she went on, thought a few moments, grabbed her suitcase, went to the restroom. When she came back, she was dressed in a pair of blue jeans, a pair of clogs, and a nice shirt, something she felt comfortable with. And she went out and she presented as herself. She presented in the way she saw herself. And do you know that of all the presenters, she got the highest marks? What the people putting on the presentation, the sponsors felt like would happen is that she would be seen as less effective. And yet she was actually seen as more effective because she was willing to take that risk to be herself. So where are we? And I say we because I am including myself. Where are we willing to risk what people think of us to be ourselves, to take a stance, to live in our divine nature? Where are we willing to say, this is who I am, and if you don't like me, that's okay, and if you love me, I think that's great. Where are we willing to be ourselves so that the light that we truly are, that divine nature of us, shines forth. There will always be a critic. Ralph Waldo Emerson puts it very nicely. Whatever course you decide upon, there will always be someone to tell you that you are wrong. There are always difficulties arising which tempt you to believe that your critics are right. To map out a course of action and to follow it to an end requires great courage. It requires courage. I've said many times in this sanctuary, unity is not for sissies. It takes great courage to live in our divinity, because we have to stand in our power when we live in our divinity. And what if somebody doesn't like our power? What if somebody doesn't like the decisions we've made? What if somebody doesn't like our way of being? That's probably going to happen. And when we really embrace, well, somebody's not going to like me, then we can step further into knowing, well, okay, I knew that was going to happen. But what do I like about me? And am I willing to make my opinion of me more important than anybody else's opinion? I spent the last week teaching a wonderful class called Healing and Wholeness. I've taught it about 7 different times across the last 2 years. And I really like teaching it because it reminds me that I have an opportunity to live in my divine nature and that I'm whole. And when I'm talking to the students, what I hear over and over and over across the classes is, I don't truly believe that I'm whole. I wish I did, but I don't truly believe it. And we affirm that we're created in the image of and as the likeness of God, and yet we have another voice. We affirm that we are living in our divine nature, and sometimes we have another voice. Truly, we are divine. We are divine. Jesus said it to people, don't you know you're God's? Don't you know that about yourself? In Unity, we translate that as I am divine. And I'm going to invite you to say that with me in a moment. But then let's pause and notice what other words come up for you. So together, let's say, I am divine. Together, I am divine. Now listen. Listen to what I call the monkey mind. No, you're not. No, you're not. How can you believe that? That's really egocentric. That's really arrogant. Whatever yours is your unique, what I would call tail ender, or your unique monkey mind. Because I'm a unique expression of God, and so my monkey mind is probably going to say very different things than your monkey mind. And yet that's what happens. But true spirituality, according to Brene Brown, true belonging is the spiritual practice of believing in and belonging to yourself so deeply that you can share your most authentic self with the world. Now, that's a big statement. You can share your most authentic self with the world and find sacredness in both being a part of something and standing alone in the wilderness. Wow. Do you want some of that?
Yes.
Yeah. That means that we may have to face some discomfort at times. It may mean we have to take a risk at times. Years ago, I was challenged by the question, am I willing to risk everything for my full aliveness? It was a challenging question for me. People say, what's the big deal about that? It was a big deal about that because I was really afraid of what I might have to give up if I truly stood in my full aliveness. And I was really afraid of how wonderful my life could be if I really stood in my full aliveness. I was really afraid of the amount of joy that I could have and the life that I could have if I stood in my full aliveness. It's very much what Marianne Williamson talks about. We're afraid of our light, we're afraid of our power, we're afraid of our wholeness, because somebody might come and try to get into that part that we think is missing, and they might be right. But the truth of us is that we are divine in nature. And we have the full capacity of God to live every single day. We can live in whatever way we want. And what will happen as whatever thoughts we're holding in our mind, they're going to produce. They're going to. That's the spiritual law. And then up under there, are we willing to find love? That energy that emanates from the heart and wants nothing but the best for the object of its affection. And we are the object of affection as well as each other. Are we willing to love ourselves enough that we don't let somebody run over us? Are we willing to love ourselves enough that we have boundaries? And we're going to talk about that because Brene Brown puts out some ideas about what it means to learn how to trust ourselves. But before we do that, let's look at Myrtle Fillmore. We have everything we need to enable us to do the many things that we have come into this world to do. We have it all already. That's those capacities of God. And personally, I find that incredibly exciting. Scary at times, but incredibly exciting. We need to let the Spirit of God take hold of our soul and set it to doing its perfect work in our body. Allow ourselves to express our divine nature. Allow ourselves to live as fully as we possibly can. Allow ourselves to have the joy that we most want to have. To create a life that we get up in the morning and we look forward to. To create a life that we get up in the morning and say, I wonder what goodness is going to happen today. I wonder how I'm going to be delighted and surprised by the universe. I wonder what amazing things are going to occur in my life today that are unexpected. Or I wonder what expected things that I've been holding in my thoughts are going to manifest. There's a level for me of excitement in that. There's a level for me of, yes, I want to be here. So there's a level of joy in that. And we all have the capacity to do that and to express those unique gifts. The real question is, are you in for that? And only you, amen. And only you can decide, I'm in. I'm in. Yeah, I think that's exciting. Now, in order to begin to do that, to begin to create that kind of life, Brene Brown puts forth 7 different qualities, and I'll try to go over them fairly rapidly with you. Get the book. She goes over in a less quick way. But boundaries, we respect each other's boundaries. This is important in life in general, and it's important in spiritual community, and it's important in the world. Think about what it would be like to be driving on the roads of Wilmington, and people just drive however they want to drive. Any old way. That's where I call upon my divinity and say I'm surrounded by safe and courteous drivers. But they do, and some don't. But then if we didn't have any rules, we believe that there would be some level of chaos. But we respect each other's boundaries. When we're not clear what's okay to do or not do, we simply ask, would this be okay? Would this be acceptable? And we go to the people who are in charge to ask that. We have a willingness to say yes or no. If somebody's treating us in a way that we do not feel loving, we can say, I don't like how you're treating me. It's not anything about you as a person, but your behavior is not working for me. So no. I've spent a lot of time over the last 3 years being in a lot of different unity churches. And what I hear from people is, oh, I felt like I had to let that person be that way because I was trying to love them. Well, love has a spine, and it has yeses and nos to it. It has an ability to say, this is not loving behavior, or I really appreciate this behavior. And we have to find our own individualized yeses and nos. When I got into a relationship, I said, okay, these are my absolute no's. If they're crossed, I don't want to be in this relationship anymore. And these are my absolute yeses. Now, I have spent my time focusing on my absolute yeses, and what has happened? More of those yeses have come about. And so what happens is, when we apply principle, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. So when I'm willing to say yes when I believe that the impulse within me is yes, and know when the inner impulse is no, I create space for much more of my yeses to come through, because I'm not doing things I don't want to be doing, because I'm afraid that if I don't do them, someone won't approve of me, or I'm afraid somebody's going to get mad at me, I'm afraid I won't have any friends, which is the ultimate. It's a challenge sometimes to be in this human body, and yet when we're willing to stand in that divine nature of ours, recognize the power that we have, we can move forth. We can live fully. We can set the boundaries, hold them, and find ways to navigate what's going on in front of us. Reliability. We do what we say we're going to do, and we don't do what we say we're not going to do. And so I want people to know that when they ask me to do something, that I'm going to do it. So there's a level of trust that is being built there. And then when I say, well, I'm not going to do that, then I won't. So there's a level of trust being built there. But first, I have to bring the trust myself and learn how to trust myself, be reliable to myself. Accountability. We own our mistakes, we apologize, and we make amends. I might say something, and somebody's uncomfortable with it, but I don't know it until they tell me quite often. And so if somebody says, oh, I felt uncomfortable when you said that, I usually say, thank you for letting me know, because I wouldn't have known otherwise. But I need to be willing to do the same. I don't like what you're saying. I don't like how you're being, because I'm feeling like you're imposing on me, and I'd like to have a relationship with you where there's give and take, where we can actually engage with each other and have fun together, and deep fun, learning tons of fun, but I want to be able to share with you what's going on with me. That's accountability, and I want to take responsibility for my behavior. I cannot take it for yours, but I do want to take it for mine, and I'm going to invite you to take it for yours, so that we're all taking responsibility together. And responsibility is not blame, you guys. It's wow, of all the choices available to me, the infinite choices, I can choose my response. The vault, this is a hard one for people. It's like a bank vault. You know, we put our money in, we expect it to be safe. Well, the vault would be like a conversational vault. I share something with you and I expect it to be safe. And I want to know who it's going to be safe with and who it's not going to be safe with. And so what I'm doing in the vault is not sharing information or experiences that are not mine to share. So what that means is I have to learn to talk about me and talk about you. And if you and I are the only ones in the room, we're the only ones we're really talking about. What happens to us is we often think we're not good enough, and oh, I don't have anything that you would really like to hear. I'm not interesting enough. So let me tell you about somebody else, because you're going to be interested in what I know about somebody else. Well, that's being out of the vault. And if somebody's going to talk about me to somebody else, they're going to talk about me to you, they're going to talk about you to somebody else. That's kind of how it works. I want to be somebody that when you share something with me, you know it's going to stay in the vault. I want to be that kind of person, so that when you and I are together, we're talking about you and me. And we're talking about cool things in our lives, and we're talking about things that are maybe painful in our lives, but they're going to stay between you and me. And that builds trust. Integrity. We choose what is right. We choose to practice our values rather than simply professing them. Well, this is walking your talk. And I have to tell you, there have been times when I haven't actually known how to walk what I'm teaching. I was teaching a class on qualitative research one time, and the truth is I'd never done it. And I told the class I've never done it, but I was hired to teach it. I did an okay job with it, but the whole time I knew that I had knowledge but not knowingness. So I knew the principles, but I wasn't living them, and I had never lived them. I was just simply teaching it. The first time I ever taught statistics, I was about half a page and maybe half a paragraph above this in front of the students. But over the course of time, I was learning it, so I actually moved from knowledge to knowingness. And so in integrity, what we're learning how to do is move from what we know about principle, what we know about spiritual principle in our heads, to living it. And I think this is the longest journey sometimes. And then there's times where I really don't want to admit that my thinking has actually outpictured what has become outpictured. Sometimes I don't want to own that. I don't want to live in that space of integrity, but when I do, it gives me the freedom, the absolute freedom to say, oh, I can simply shift my thinking and my feeling, and I can outpicture something new, because that's the law. And we always want to start with order, divine law, and from there, bring up love into that. Start with order. Start with the law. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. And then bring the love there. And so we can bring the love for when we've manifested something we really want, or we can bring the love to ourselves when we're manifesting something we don't want. We can love ourselves no matter what, from exactly where we are. And that's non-judgment. Asking for what we need, but not judging ourselves for having needs. As a female, I don't know about you guys, but as a woman, I was often brought up not to have any needs. You're not supposed to want something, you're not supposed to need anything. And so it took me a long time to say, I need some help. And then if somebody says, well, you should really learn to do it yourself, I had a hard time. But I remember the first time when I said, I need some help, and somebody said, oh, I'm happy to help you. It's my pleasure to help you. We can do that for each other. We can support each other in that way. And then generosity, to extend the most generous interpretation possible to the intention, words, and actions of each other. When somebody says something to me, do I immediately go on the defense, or do I say, wonder what's happening here? And I spread out a little bit. And then when something happens out there, do I bring it into principle and hold it in the light of love, or do I instantly go into fear? Oh my gosh, and do the monkey mind thing. Or when something happens, when I see an event, am I willing to hold it in my heart? It happens all the time in the grocery store. A child is crying. Do I think, oh, that mother should shut up that child? Or do I come into my heart? And heart math tells us that the heart is the visible center of an invisible energy, that energy that wants the best for each other. And heart math also says that when we hold that energy, it radiates out from us for 3 feet. So if I'm in for 3 miles, when I'm in Harris Teeter, and I'm holding love in my heart, I'm filling up Harris Teeter. I've never seen one that's big enough that I'm not. And if I'm not alone, which what I love is being in a spiritual community that's willing to do that. If I'm not alone, we could knock the cans off of the shelves with our love in Harris Teeter. We could just knock them right off the shelves. And can you imagine how much more quickly that child is going to say, oh, maybe I don't need to cry so much, because they're feeling the love. And if that's what happened when somebody's crying, instead of saying, oh, tell me what happened, we said, oh, let me love you. How would you like to be supported? How would you most like to be supported? Then we're acting with generosity. Myrtle Fillmore says, I've been teaching Myrtle Fillmore this week, so I'm immersed in her for the past week. It's up to us to accept our God-given perfection for ourselves, to put aside our past mistakes and the untrue suggestions, and place our undivided attention upon the creator of our inner pattern of perfection, to place our attention on our divine nature. That's what she's calling. Can you see who you are, the magnificence that you are? This is the secret of success in all spiritual treatments. You must bring all of your mental attitudes, the center of your consciousness, and even your physical structures to this high place in divine mind, where you see as God sees. Love with a spine. To see the Christ in somebody and say to them, I don't like your behavior. To see the Christ in somebody and say, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate what you're saying. I appreciate who you are. And to do our best to stop behavior that's not appropriate or effective by saying no, but to focus our attention on what we appreciate, what we have gratitude for, to focus our attention on what we do well, our spiritual gifts. Now, I can't sing like Terrell, and I certainly can't play piano like Lisa, but I have gifts just as each of you have gifts. And those gifts are unique to me in many ways. And those gifts that each of us have actually come together in the collective to produce a whole community that has all the different gifts that are working together. And how beautiful. So there's not that many open spaces or that many places where there's a vacuum. But where there is, we can magnetize to us by our love that people come in and fill those spaces for us. Murder Fillmore also says, so get busy using the truth you know. So get busy. I can't imagine Myrtle Fillmore. I never met her, but I just can't imagine her shaking her finger. I think she just got excited. Get busy knowing the truth that you know. Love those about you in a practical way, paying no attention to what others are doing insofar as to make comparisons. Bring forth your own joyous world of love, friendship, beauty, and plenty. Focus on ourselves. Where are we living these 7 principles? Where are we living in our own integrity? Where are we living love that says yes or no, thus enhancing our fullness? And if you're interested in these, I have broken her statement down into some affirmations. If you're interested, I invite you to say them with me. Together. I live the truth I know. I see myself as a beloved expression of God. I love those about me in a practical way while honoring myself. I bring forth my own joyous world of love, friendship, beauty, and plenty. This is what my hope for myself is. And I'm actually going to take it a step further. It's my commitment to myself. It's my invitation to you to bring forth your own world of love, friendship, beauty, and plenty in whatever way you most want. The Bible teaches us our Father's good pleasure to give us the kingdom. Our Father is divine mind, source energy, God, whatever He wanted. We have to do our work. That's the thoughts held in mind. And the moment we do that, we bring forth the kingdom of heaven. Now, my heaven's going to look a little different than your heaven. But we're going to bring forth our own unique, individualized heaven so we can truly look forward to the day that's in front of us, to the relationships that we're in, to the energies that we are creating together. Mindy's going to come, we're going to sing, and she's going to lead us in meditation.
I believe the words of the song will take us right to that sacred and holy place. knowing that we are a catalyst for transformation, knowing that we are the light of the world. We bring our awareness back to this time, to this place, to this community.